Ooh boy, it's been a long time, huh? After a 6-month hiatus away from making videos, I am ready to get back on that horse. I've played a lot of games during my sabbatical, but we have to start with one of my favorite genres, 3D platformers. Today, we'll be taking a look at Skylar Plux Adventure on Clover Island, inspired by the classic PS2 platformer, Jak and Daxter. It's been said that 3D platformers died a long time ago. It used to be the likes of Banjo-Kazooie, Crash Bandicoot, and Spyro were kings of the industry, and Mario of course, and there were countless imitators lining up to get a piece of that pie. But like with all trends, it was bound to end eventually. Gamers simply got older, they wanted more variety and more mature themes, plus the games were starting to get a little bit stale, thus gave rise to the generic modern military shooters. Still, gaming is in a better place today than ever before, with more variety and more compelling experiences. But nostalgia can also be a good thing. The death of entire genres at the hands of publishers because they think no one will play those games anymore is just absurd. It happened to point-and-click adventure games most notably before Kickstarter and indie developers brought those back. It also happened to horror games before the industry suddenly realized there was still a market for those as well. But while those two genres came back, 3D platformers haven't really. Sure, there are the occasional indie-made 3D platformers, A Hat in Time, Yooka-Laylee, Snake Pass, and even some from the AAA industry lately, with Super Mario Odyssey, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, and Spyro Reignited Trilogy. But none of those games have seemed to spark the second coming like we've seen with point-and-click and horror games, especially in the mainstream market. For now, the genre largely remains a niche cottage industry held together by little more than love for the genre and very dedicated fans. Perhaps a big part of that is because where modern point-and-clicks like the Telltale games and Life is Strange and horror games like Resident Evil 7 and Outlast have pushed their respective genres forward, 3D platformers remain firmly rooted in the past. With the exception of Snake Pass, none of the current crop of games really attempt anything new. They're almost all modeled after the aforementioned Banjo-Kazooie and Super Mario 64, like so many other games of their time. That's why the genre died. In that regard, Skylar Plux isn't really any different, save for where it takes its inspiration. Rather than aping Nintendo 64 platformers, it goes straight to the PS2, primarily Jak and Daxter, but there's also a little bit of Ratchet & Clank in here too. For now, there's enough to separate Skylar Plux from the rest of the pack because it's the only one going after that particular subset of platformers, but that's not the only qualifier I feel the need to give here. For starters, the game is usually $15, or just under £12, but I got my copy during a flash sale on the PSN for just $3.74, which might be the least I've ever paid for a video game. Then there's the fact that I much prefer PS2 platformers to N64 ones, and Jak and Daxter in particular is my favorite, so for once, I'm the one with the rose-tinted glasses on. So maybe because of that ridiculous sale, which is already over sadly, my expectations have been colored somewhat, and I'm willing to be a little more forgiving. Regardless, if I gave out scores, I'd definitely give it higher than the 59 it currently has on Metacritic. Before we talk about the game itself, I should point out that it was developed by Right Nice Games, published by Grip Digital, and released on the PC, Xbox One, and PS4, which is what I'm playing it on. And to all you Switch port beggars, I wouldn't waste my time. This is Right Nice Games' first game, a Swedish company founded by 4 students. They won some awards for their work on Skylar Plux, including Game of the Year and Best Execution and Art at the Swedish Games Awards. However, I'm not sure if they are still around. They haven't announced any new games lately. They haven't been active on their social media account since December 2016, and they haven't answered my emails, not that I can blame them. Alright, enough waffling, let's talk about the game itself, shall we?
See those swing nodes? Use your grappling beam to swing it through the air.
The Jak and Daxter influence on the gameplay is obvious, from the barrel roll jump that lets you move faster and jump higher, a crouching boost jump, a ground pound attack, a punch that launches you forward, or the safer and more effective spinning attack. But one of the things I love about this game is that it uses Jak and Daxter as a starting point, rather than remaining slavishly devoted to it. It takes elements from those games that worked, while adding in its own ideas. Whereas Jak 2 and Jak 3 gave you a bunch of guns to use, vehicles to hijack, kart racing games, mechs, a light and dark mechanic, whack-a-mole, turret sections, and whatever this is,
Nicely!
Skylar and Plux isn't nearly as extravagant, which is a good thing. As much as I love Jak and Daxter, it became way too unfocused by the third game. In Skylar and Plux, 3D platforming is the alpha and omega. If you don't love jumping around platforms and collecting objects in a 3D space, then this game isn't for you, because that's about all it is. There are, however, slight wrinkles in the form of your robotic arm. You have a jetpack, which isn't part of your arm, but go with me here, a hook shot, a magnet, and a device that slows down time. These little additions add depth to the platforming, forcing you to switch between the three in the fly and think ahead when you need to swap and what exactly you need to do. At least, that's the theory. In reality, the scant 3 levels of this game are all focused on an individual accessory. You never really have to swap between the 3 except for your jetpack if you feel you need a tiny bit of extra boost to make a jump you're not feeling confident about. There are only a handful of areas where you need to swap between the mechanics, and even then, it's only for 1 or 2 jumps. Because of this, what could have added depth instead feels like a missed opportunity. The game is also laughably easy, something that combined with its short length means that you can play through the whole game in as little as 2 hours if you don't bother collecting everything. Not that there's a whole lot to collect anyway. In fact, the gameplay is so shallow, I'm struggling to think of anything more to say about it. It at least feels fine to control. They really nailed the physics here. You're not playing a bowling ball like in Yooka-Laylee or a balloon like in certain sections of A Hat in Time. And while I wish they did more with the various gadgets, they do at least the bare minimum to keep the game from ever feeling stale, although again, that might have more to do with the short length. The story is also vaguely similar to Jak and Daxter, though not nearly as fleshed out or good. There's an ancient race of creators, progenitors in this case, that mysteriously vanished years ago, leaving behind only powerful relics and a village led by a wise elder. The main character, Skylar, was experimented on by the antagonist, though in this case it's never explained why or even who Skylar was before the experiments. Also, the antagonist, CRT, seems to be more inspired by Handsome Jack than Baron Praxis, though. The thing about Handsome Jack is that it's very easy to make that type of character annoying. Hell, Handsome Jack is annoying 90% of the time. And that's the case here too, something that isn't helped by the voice acting.
Bob, how is our test subject doing? Oh, well, look who's awake. Our little thief. Are you really so stupid as to think you could steal from the great CRT?
Due to those experiments, Skylar has her memory removed, and I think the same can be said of the writers. Nothing is ever explained about who Skylar is, what CRT's goal was, how exactly he was going about achieving it, who the progenitors are, or who the people of the village are, or who the elder is. There's something about Skylar being some kind of a thief or mercenary or something who came to steal something from CRT but was captured and had their memory erased to become some kind of super soldier or something with that robotic arm. It's mentioned at the start of the game and a couple of times by CRT, but is completely dropped by the end. And she's a silent protagonist too, so it doesn't really matter anyway, I guess. Meanwhile, there's a subplot about Plux, your bird companion, waiting to be reunited with his father, who left prior to the start of the game. Where he went, why he left, how long he's been gone, why Plux is still waiting for him are all glossed over in seconds, and he starts following Skylar around for some reason. He feels like he's simply there so the game can be a buddy platformer, as he adds nothing to the plot or gameplay mechanics at all. He's just there. So the story is nothing to write home about. There's a Dances with Wolves Avatar kind of thing of CRT coming to this island and capturing the natives to build some kind of lab, and you have to save everyone, but it's never explained what the lab is for or why it had to be there. The overall aim of the game is to get 3 fuses, which is used to power a device, but again, I don't think what the device is or what it does is ever explained, and when you do get all the fuses, CRT swoops in and immediately uses it to do something, somehow, and when you go back to his ship to fight him, it turns out he's actually a hamster who just wanted to be friends. You know what, let's forget about the story, doesn't matter. There is at least a lot of charm here, mostly from the Loa, the captured creatures you have to save. There are 51 of them in total, all trapped in cages, and you need to spend 100 crystals freeing them, and they are just adorable, look at them. For every 8 or so Loa you free, you'll also get an extra hit point. Not that you'll need it with how easy the game is, and you can talk to the freed Loa in the hub world and get some lore. Not that it's particularly interesting or relevant. The crystals have their uses too. You need 100 to free the Loa, but once you collect that many, it'll also automatically refill your health. You can tell a lot of effort was put into at least attempting to incentivize you to collect things, rather than it just filling up a point counter, though the effort wasn't entirely effective. Look, there's no getting around it. The first thing you'll probably notice about this game is that it is rough. It is very rough around the edges. You can tell the team either didn't have enough time, money, or frankly talent to stick the landing, because it's pretty janky and extremely short. There's no animation for turning around, it's incredibly easy to jump up the side of walls and buildings to get to areas you aren't supposed to go, and in the final level the frame rate tanks and the game even freezes up multiple times. Half the cutscenes are barely animated still images, while the other half are just black screens with CRT talking to his assistant Bob. There's one area in the hub world where the game automatically switches between 2 songs without any transition between the two. The rest of the game is Jak and Daxter through and through. The colorful cartoon art style and the soundtrack are both bright and vibrant, and reminiscent of the first game, the precursor Legacy. Skylar is a silent protagonist, and Plux occasionally chimes in with a witty rebuttal, though he's nowhere near as endearing as Daxter. Even the celebration Skylar does when she gets one of the fuses is exactly the same as the one Jak does when he gets a precursor orb. Right Nice Games is clearly wearing their inspiration on their sleeve, and their heart. Skylar and Plux has many flaws, that much is obvious, but the core platforming handles well with fluid controls and precise physics, the graphics are suitably colorful and cartoony and look great, and even though other aspects are forgettable at best, the game gets the important parts right. When you're playing it, you feel the love and the passion that went into it. Well, except for the story, that feels rushed and trite, but the rest of it was clearly made by fans who were passionate about what they were doing and wanted to see another Jak and Daxter-esque platformer again, and that's what makes me love it so much despite its flaws. And also that $3.74 price tag helped a lot too. Skylar and Plux is not the savior of the 3D platformer, and it's not going to inspire anyone to make any more. In fact, a majority of the people who play it will probably either think it's just mediocre or not even like it, unless you're a hardcore fan of the genre or a Jak and Daxter fan like I am. This isn't the kind of game the genre needs. It needs something more innovative and, above all, polished. Still, it is a serviceable platformer, and I'd love to see Right Nice come back with a sequel and improve upon it. Refine it, come up with some new ideas, fix the story, and they might have something special on their hands.
Okay, bye now.